The diner smelled like fresh coffee and sizzling bacon, the kind of scent that clung to your clothes long after you left. I sat at my usual booth by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass, blurring the neon signs outside. It was another late shift, another night of pouring coffee for tired truckers and regulars who didn't want to go home. Then the door opened and he walked in. Brooke shook the rain from his hair, his jacket already soaked through. He was tall, lean, with the kind of face that still carried traces of the boy he used to be, but with sharper edges now. He looked around, spotted me, and smiled. That smile. It always had a way of making the exhaustion in my bones a little lighter. "Mom," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "You didn't tell me you were working late." I sighed, rubbing my temple. "I picked up an extra shift. Janine's kid is sick." Brooke frowned. "You need to stop doing that." I knew what he meant. It had been 3 years since Tom died and I was still working 2 jobs, still running on fumes, still barely allowing myself to exist outside of the next paycheck. Brooke had been saying it for months, years even, that I needed to slow down. "I'll rest when I can afford to," I said, forcing a smile. "What are you doing here?" "Thought you were working tonight." "Got off early." He leaned back against the worn vinyl seat, stretching his legs out like he belonged there. Maybe he did. Brooke had practically grown up in this diner, doing his homework in the corner booth while I pulled long shifts. He knew the place as well as I did. He studied me for a moment, his dark eyes too sharp, too knowing. "You look exhausted, Mom." I waved him off, but I could feel the weight of his stare. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You never stop." He ran a hand through his damp hair, shaking his head. "You shouldn't have to work this much. It's not fair. Life's not fair," I said lightly, sipping my now cold coffee. "You learn to deal with it." Brooke didn't laugh. "You never go out. You never do anything for yourself." "I don't have time for that." "You should make time." There was something in his voice, something firm, almost desperate, and I realized this wasn't just another one of our usual conversations. Brooke had been watching me struggle and he hated it. "I got another job," he said suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "Another job. At the hotel by the highway. Night shifts." He said it so casually, like it was nothing, but I knew what it meant. He was already working as a waiter, already picking up every extra shift he could find. "Brooke, no." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "You're already working too much. I can handle it. You shouldn't have to." "Neither should you," he shot back. We stared at each other for a long moment. The rain kept falling. The diner hummed with the quiet sounds of clinking dishes and murmured conversations. "You need to live, Mom," he said, softer now. "Not just work." A lump formed in my throat. I wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't understand, but the truth was he did. Brooke had grown up too fast, shouldered too much responsibility. He saw me not just as his mother but as a person, and that scared me. "I'll think about it," I murmured, looking away. Brooke sighed but didn't push. He just nodded, reaching for the menu, pretending like the conversation hadn't happened. But I knew it had, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. I hadn't gone out in years. At least not for myself. The idea had started as a whisper in the back of my mind, something small, something I could ignore. But Brooke's words had lingered longer than I expected. "You never do anything for yourself. You need to live." I hadn't known how much I needed to hear that until he said it. So, on a whim, I picked up my phone and called Lily. "Hey, you feel like going out?" Lily let out a delighted laugh. "Who are you and what have you done with Kelly?" I smiled, rolling my eyes. "I'm serious. I need a break." "Finally," she said. "O'Malley's. It's got strong drinks and an even stronger bartender." "O'Malley's." I hadn't been there in years. I hesitated, but only for a second. "All right," I said. "Let's do it." It felt strange, getting ready for something that wasn't work, something that wasn't for anyone but myself. I pulled out an old green dress from the back of my closet, the one I used to love but never had a reason to wear anymore. When I slipped it on, it still fit the same, still hugged in all the right places, still made me feel like I was someone. By the time Lily picked me up, I almost felt like myself again. The bar was alive with music, low laughter, and the clinking of glasses. The second we stepped inside, I felt something shift inside me, something loosen. Lily grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the bar, already grinning at the bartender like he was an old friend. I laughed, shaking my head. "Do you live here?" "Shoo," she said. "I'm trying to get us free drinks." I let myself relax as I slid onto the bar stool, smoothing my dress absently. The atmosphere was warm, electric, and for once I wasn't exhausted from working through it. I was part of it. The bartender set down a drink in front of me. "This one's on the house," he said with a wink. "First time I've seen you here." "First time in a long time," I admitted, taking a sip. The cocktail was sweet and tart, just strong enough to make my fingertips tingle. I laughed at something Lily said, felt myself ease into the moment. The music, the lights, the taste of liquor on my tongue. It was like stepping back into a version of myself I had forgotten. And then I felt it. A pull. A weight. Like someone was watching me. I turned, scanning the room without knowing what I was looking for. And then, my breath caught. Brooke. He was sitting in a booth across the bar, his dark eyes locked on me. His expression was unreadable, something tense beneath the surface, something I didn't understand. For a second I didn't recognize him. Not because I didn't know him, but because I wasn't seeing him as I always had. My son, the boy who used to fall asleep in the backseat on long drives. The boy who made me coffee when I was too tired to stand. No, the man staring at me now was different. And the way he was looking at me, like he didn't know me either, made my stomach tighten in a way I couldn't explain. I tilted my head slightly, confused. Brooke didn't move, didn't look away. What was he thinking? Lily nudged me, drawing my attention back to the bar. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "Nothing," I murmured. But my heart was still pounding. A strange, uneasy warmth spread through my chest, and I quickly turned back toward the bar, gripping my glass a little tighter. "You okay?" Lily asked, her brows furrowing slightly. I forced a smile. "Yeah. Just didn't expect to see someone I know." Lily glanced over her shoulder, following my line of sight. "Oh," she said, a slow smirk tugging at her lips. "Let me guess. Cute guy at the back booth." I choked on my drink. "What? No." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because someone back there is definitely looking at you." I swallowed hard, shaking my head. It's my son." Lily's expression flickered with surprise before settling into something amused. "Brooke's here." I nodded, exhaling slowly. "Yeah." "Huh." She took a sip of her drink, glancing back again, then lowering her voice. "Well, he looks a little surprised." I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. "Probably because he's never seen me out like this." Lily grinned. "Well, maybe he should. You look amazing." I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't deny the small thrill that ran through me. When was the last time I had felt seen? Not as a mom, not as an employee, not as someone struggling to make ends meet, but as a woman? Still, I didn't want to embarrass Brooke, and I certainly didn't want to make him uncomfortable in front of his friends. So I did the only thing I could do. I pretended not to notice. I laughed at Lily's jokes, I sipped my drink, I let the bartender flirt harmlessly, and I ignored the way I could feel Brooke's gaze on me. Time passed in a blur of conversation and music, and for a little while I let myself forget about everything else. But eventually I glanced toward the back of the bar again. Brooke was still watching. His posture was tense, his expression unreadable, his fingers tapping absently against his glass. One of his friends said something to him, nudging his arm, and Brooke blinked as if snapping out of a trance, shaking his head with a forced laugh. I exhaled, finally pushing my drink away. Lily caught the movement. "Ready to go?" I nodded. "Yeah." She didn't argue, just signaled the bartender for the check, then stood, stretching slightly. As we walked toward the exit, I resisted the urge to look back to see if Brooke was still watching. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and kept walking, my heels clicking softly against the floor. It wasn't until I stepped out into the cool night air that I let out the breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The moment I stepped into the house, I felt the silence settle over me like a heavy, knowing presence. The air was still, the dim glow from the kitchen lamp casting long shadows along the hallway. I dropped my purse onto the counter and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My heart was still unsteady, my thoughts tangled from the evening. Usual. Just another night, the same conversations. And yet something had been different. Brooke had been there, sitting there, watching me with an expression I couldn't place. It wasn't just casual observation, nor was it the usual quiet concern he carried for me. It was something else. Something that made my skin warm under the dim neon lights. I tried to ignore it. Tried to convince myself it was nothing. But every time I glanced his way, his gaze was already waiting, holding me there for a second too long before he looked away. And the strangest part? I liked it. Even now, standing in the dim hush of our home, my body still carried the awareness of his stare. I turned on the bath, the rush of water filling the room with steam and soft echoes. Stripping off my clothes, I lowered myself into the tub, letting the heat soothe the tension in my muscles. My head rested against the cool porcelain and my eyes fluttered shut. Why had Brooke looked at me like that? And why had it stirred something inside me, something I didn't want to name? I tried to push the thought away, but it clung to me, stubborn and insistent. I pictured him again, the way his dark eyes had followed my every move, the flicker of something unspoken behind them. I had known him all his life, had watched him grow into the man he was today. He was still my Brooke, still the same boy who used to tug at my sleeve and beg for one more bedtime story, still the same young man who had carried the weight of our struggles alongside me after Tom had passed. And yet, tonight something had shifted. I wasn't sure how long I stayed in the water, but by the time I emerged, my skin was warm, my fingers pruned. Wrapping myself in a towel, I padded to my room, my mind still tangled in thoughts I shouldn't be having. I tried to shake them off as I combed my wet hair, letting it fall in damp strands over my shoulders. That was when I heard the door open. I turned, startled, to find Brooke standing in the doorway. He looked as if he had just come in, his jacket still in his hand, his hair slightly damp from the misty night air. For a moment he just stood there watching me. "I couldn't keep my eyes off a certain beautiful lady tonight," he said, his voice quiet but sure. My breath caught. His words hung in the air between us, heavy and impossible to ignore. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. The way he was looking at me, God, that look, sent a sharp, involuntary shiver down my spine. "Brooke," I whispered, unsure of what I was even about to say. He took a step closer. "I felt something tonight, Kelly." His voice was lower now, rough around the edges, filled with something I wasn't ready to face. "And now I don't know how to sleep. I can only think of you." I blinked, unable to move. "I don't know how to deal with this," he admitted, his voice unsteady for the first time. "I've tried to push it away, tried to pretend I don't feel it. But I do. And I think," he exhaled, shaking his head, "I think you feel it too." His words sent a crack through my chest. I should have told him he was wrong. Should have laughed, brushed it off, called him tired or mistaken or anything to make this moment disappear. But I couldn't. Because the truth was, I had felt it too. I had felt it in the way my pulse quickened when I caught him staring. I had felt it in the strange, nervous thrill that ran through me when he spoke. I had felt it in the way my mind had refused to let go of the weight of his gaze at the bar. But none of that made it right. I turned away, gripping the edge of the dresser as if it could anchor me. "This isn't," my voice wavered. "Brooke, this isn't something we can talk about." He didn't move. "I know," he said finally. But there was something in his tone, something that told me he wasn't going to let this go so easily. "I'll see you in the morning," I whispered, hoping he would take the hint, hoping he would leave before this moment unraveled into something neither of us could take back. A beat of silence passed. Then slowly I heard him step back. The door creaked slightly as he pulled it open, and then after a moment he was gone. I exhaled shakily, gripping the dresser tighter. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same. Nothing would ever be the same. I woke up to the scent of coffee, rich and warm, drifting through the half-open door of my bedroom. For a few blissful moments I lay still, caught between sleep and wakefulness, letting the aroma wrap around me like a familiar embrace. But then the memories of last night came rushing in, unraveling in slow, deliberate pieces. The way Brooke had looked at me, the things he had said, the quiet tension that had filled the space between us before he walked away. My heart tightened. I turned my head toward the window, watching the golden morning light filter through the curtains. Maybe I had imagined it all. Maybe it had been a moment of exhaustion, of misplaced emotions, and in the clarity of daylight, everything would return to the way it was. But then my bedroom door creaked open. Brooke stood there holding a tray with coffee, scrambled eggs, and toast. His dark hair was still slightly damp from a shower, and he was wearing a plain white t-shirt, his easy confidence settling into the room like he belonged there. Like this was routine, like we were something. "Good morning," he said, a slow smile tugging at the corner of his lips. I sat up, pulling the blanket higher around me. "You made me breakfast? You're not going to work today." I blinked. "What?" Brooke walked in, setting the tray on my lap as he perched on the edge of the bed. He met my gaze, calm and steady. "I fired you." I let out a breathless laugh, half expecting him to grin and tell me he was joking. But he didn't. "What do you mean you fired me?" I asked, my stomach tightening. He leaned back slightly, stretching his arms behind him. "I called them this morning. Told them you're not coming back." Panic rose in my chest. "Brooke, I need that job. We need the money." "No, you need rest," he corrected, his voice soft but firm. "I saw it last night, Kelly. You looked alive. It was the best I've ever seen you. I want that version of you, not the one who's exhausted every night, running on fumes." I stared at him, my heart thudding against my ribs. The way he spoke, the way he looked at me, it was like he had taken ownership of me, of my choices. I should have been furious. I should have fought him on this. But instead, a strange warmth bloomed in my chest. Because deep down, some part of me liked it. Liked the way he was taking care of me. Liked the way his eyes lingered on me like I was his. "This isn't how life works, Brooke," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. He smirked. "It is now." The days passed and everything changed. It started small, little gestures that made me feel like something more than just mom. Brooke would leave flowers for me on the kitchen counter, sometimes roses, sometimes wildflowers he claimed he stumbled upon. He started taking me places, out to lunch, to the park, anywhere that wasn't the diner or the four walls of our home. And he never asked for permission. He just decided, and I went along with it because God help me, I wanted to. Then one evening he surprised me with something that caught me completely off guard. "We're going out tonight," he said, walking into the living room where I was curled up with a book. I raised an eyebrow. "Where?" "A bar." I scoffed. "I'm not going to a bar with you, Brooke." He crossed his arms, his grin slow and knowing. "Why not?" I hesitated. "Because I'm too old for that." His eyes darkened slightly, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. Then in one smooth motion he walked over and leaned down until we were inches apart. "You weren't too old last night when I couldn't take my eyes off you." My breath caught. "You weren't too old when you made me feel something I've never felt before," he murmured. "So don't give me that excuse." I swallowed, looking away. "Brooke, people will talk." He smirked. "Let them." And before I could protest further, he grabbed my hand and pulled me off the couch. "Come on, Kelly. Just once. Just one night with me." And God help me, I said yes. The bar was dimly lit, the kind of place that hummed with low laughter and the clinking of glasses. The music was lively, the air thick with the scent of whiskey, and warm bodies pressed together in easy conversation. Brooke was in his element, relaxed, confident, his fingers wrapped around a glass as he leaned in to whisper something to me. I was still tense at first, feeling out of place, but then he started making jokes, teasing me the way he always did. And before I knew it, I was laughing. Really laughing. We drank, we danced, we let the music wrap around us like we were the only two people in the room. And for the first time in years I felt wanted. Not just as someone's mother. Not just as someone surviving day by day. But as Kelly. A woman. When we got home I was still breathless from the night, still feeling the buzz of it in my veins. I kicked off my shoes in the entryway, shaking my head with a laugh. "I can't believe you talked me into that." Brooke shut the door behind us, his eyes never leaving me. "I can." And then, before I could process what was happening, he stepped forward, grabbed me by the waist and kissed me. I gasped softly against his lips, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't pull away. His hands held me firmly, possessively, like he had been waiting for this moment. And the worst part? I had been waiting too. When we finally broke apart, my head was spinning, my breath uneven. "Brooke," I whispered, but he shook his head. "Don't," he murmured. "Don't act like you didn't feel that too." I couldn't lie. I had felt it. And so, just like that, we crossed a line that we could never uncross. We became something we had to hide. Something dangerous. Something impossible. Something I wasn't sure I had the strength to stop. Sometimes life is unpredictable. Everything comes suddenly, as if it falls on your head, but why not if it drags you along? You both like it. Then life gradually began to improve. Brooke got a remote job on the internet, money appeared, which was not enough at the time. He started to earn very well, and I always say, "Kelly, you are my muse for making money. I am happy when you are happy." This story is just our small beginning. To be happy, isn't that what everyone wants, huh?